Good evening, everybody. If you could take your seats, please. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. It is February 10th, 2022 at 6. Just call it 6:05 p.m. I'm going to start by reading the mission statement tonight. The mission of Monument Academy is to provide a challenging, content-rich academic program offered within an engaging, caring, and positive learning environment. Established on a solid foundation of knowledge, Monument Academy emphasizes academic excellence, respect, responsibility, character, and exemplary citizenship. Could we please rise for the pledge? All right, let's move into roll call. Mr. Buczkowski.
Present.
Mrs. Clinton.
Present.
Mr. Dole.
Present.
Mrs. McEwen.
Present.
Mrs. St. Aubin.
Present.
And for the record, Ryan Graham is present. We do have a quorum. We will proceed forward with our agenda. So we move into our agenda. Do we have any additions to the agenda tonight?
Yes, we do. I would like to move that we add a discussion about snow days as the last item. So it would be G, item I, and this is at the request of administration. I'll second the motion.
Any discussion on said motion? Mr. Buczkowski, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Mrs. Clinton?
Aye.
Mr. Dole?
Aye.
Mrs. McEwen?
Aye.
Mrs. St. Aubin?
Aye.
And Ryan Graham votes aye for the record. That will add letter I under G, items requiring more discussion and action, and this will be discussion about snow days. Are there any other additions to the agenda? All right, I'll call for approval of the agenda with the addition. Is there any objections? Seeing none, the agenda will move forward with. All right, Mrs. McEwen, you are up with our school spotlight tonight.
All right, wonderful. Thank you all for coming. It's great to see such a big turnout. We don't normally have such large turnout, so it's nice to see all of your faces here. So at the beginning of each of our monthly meetings, we as a board like to start off with our school spotlight. This is a time for us to honor members from our school community who have gone above and beyond in their duties and responsibilities for our school. This nominee can be a teacher, a staff member, or parent. For this month's spotlight, we would like to recognize Mrs. Erin Hostet. Mrs. Hostet joined our school as the Gifted and Talented Coordinator in 2019. She has over 20 years of experience in the field of gifted education and endorsement in GT and in SENG, SENG trained. As we recognize her service to our school, I would like to read a note from a parent. Mrs. Hostet goes above and beyond to encourage and engage her gifted and talented students throughout all grades. Mrs. Hostet also comes alongside of parents through monthly emails, newsletters, with her wealth of knowledge to equip us in best caring for and encouraging a love for learning within our children. This year, our son and another student tested into a higher math placement than MA West offered. Rather than having these students take the current math course, Mrs. Hostet personally created a new math class just for these two students and has given increased time and attention to helping them excel while challenging their math skills. She holds her students to a high standard of excellence while motivating them to give their very best effort. Mrs. Hostet is a joy to know, and we are ever so grateful for her continued commitment to excellence at Monument Academy. Please join me tonight as we honor Mrs. Hostet for her commitment to excellence at Monument Academy.
Thank you, Mrs. Hosted, and thank you, Mrs. McEwen, for presenting the school spotlight tonight. Moving on, we will move into citizens' comments pertaining to agenda items. It looks like we have a few tonight. Just as a reminder, we're going to limit you to 3 minutes in speaking up to the microphone. It looks like the first individual we have, and forgive me if I can't read your last name, Sean Labs, I apologize.
Hey, thanks for being here. Thanks everybody for having me. Long-time listener, first-time caller, so I'm just going to stick to the script I have here. So the first one is the critical race theory topic, and so this one's easy for me, in my opinion. I'm going to start with a 40,000-foot view, and I'm going to land the plane in 3 minutes here. So before we talk specifics, who does critical race theory come from? Does it come from the same failed government that brought us all the COVID stuff? Does it come from the same failed government that is currently printing green candles for inflation that's costing me a fortune? Does it come from Marxist ideologies? Based on my extensive research, the answer is yes. Therefore, I recommend wholesale rejection. My kids are here because I already rejected the indoctrination and the Marxist ideologies of public school teaching. This ideology specifically assumes racism, teaches hate for our nation and our neighbors. It also teaches segregation. I propose we stay focused on the very real work that we have ahead of us to build this school and to educate our children. We've done enough damage to our children these last few years. Fundamental, basic education has propelled society forward for thousands of years. And as a 12-year aerospace engineer, I believe that true STEM learning, wrapped with some fun for our kids, is sufficient. If we're going to assume any type of roles and take something on, why don't we teach our children about the central banking establishment and hard money? Let's make our time worth it. So I'm not sleeping, I'm not stupid, I'm paying attention, I'm aware of the explicit agenda for people to destroy this nation. To this I say, no thank you, and God bless. Item number 2, Title IX protections. First, I don't care who you are, what you do, what you believe in, who you love, none of it. I don't care. None of that trumps biological reality. We do not mix the boys and the girls in this country, hopefully until they're consenting adults. As for any transgender people, we love you all the same. This is for your protection as well as for my children. If you feel uncomfortable in the bathroom of your biological birth, I recommend that we provide facilities, such as that family bathroom right out there that I saw walking in here, for individual use. That is my line. We've already had some issues. I'm already a little bit upset about that, so I will get off the stage. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Labs. Next up, we have a Jessica Labs.
No relation. Okay. All right, first this evening, I'd like to say thank you to our board, administration, staff, and parents who are both in attendance tonight and are here with open ears and open hearts. I'll be addressing 2 topics this evening, critical race theory and safety and privacy as it relates to the Title IX and gender expression. First, what is critical race theory? Through much research, I have boiled it down to this: a form of activism across countless areas of our society, including education, law, and politics. And it aims to convince our culture that the fundamental principles of society are based in racism. White racism, that is. The belief that white people have created a system to suppress those of color, or those of other races, and they strive to maintain that system in order to continue their advantage over society. This is neo-Marxist strategy, which literally uses racial minorities in order to bring about a revolution that has zero to do with any race issues at all. It desires to overthrow the principles and guidance that is America, which were laid out in our founding documents. CRT is fake individualism, wherein actual individualism is completely disregarded and collectivism is put into its place. For example, if you're a black conservative like Candace Owens, Thomas Sowell, Ben Carson, you're not special and unique, but instead an Uncle Tom. Why? Because these people do not believe in collectivism. They don't agree that they are oppressed, but instead see life in America as it is. Those who have drive, work hard, and never give up will make it. We just had the first black president. That is not oppression and systemic racism. That is the American dream. I don't want this polarization and division for our school. I want our children to grow and be built up in character and merit. It shouldn't matter your race, ethnicity, sexual preference, or belief. Our children should look at each other as individuals beyond these polarizing differences. CRT is teaching our kids to hate their country, vilify police, turn students against their parents, and is causing anxiety in our kids who would never ever think this way about other people. My kids are dumbfounded. They can't believe that they're racist when they've never actually looked at somebody in those ways before. They love everyone. We need to stick to teaching our kids about this great country so that many would give up everything, and so many would give up everything to be a part of it. As for safety and security for our kids, whether your child is straight, gay, lesbian, transgender, or any other sexual preference or ideation, my opinions and beliefs don't matter here. What does matter, though, is the safety of all of our children. Bathroom use is a biological factor. If someone does not feel comfortable or safe in the bathroom of their biological birth, then a person should be sent to a bathroom for an individual. End of story, period. The fact that this issue has occurred at our school is already horrifying. We are putting students in a very vulnerable situation, and it can be avoided. So let's not make this a further issue at MA.
Thank you, Mrs. Love. Next up, we have Jeffrey Salins.
I apologize, super embarrassing. I thought that was a sign-in sheet. This is my first time.
Thank you, sir. Next up would be Janae Winkleman.
Hi, I'm Janae Winkleman. I have 2 kids at Monument Academy. I would also first want to say thank you to the board for the time and energy you give to our school. It's much appreciated. With regards to critical race theory, I just want to say that I oppose the teaching of this in our schools. I think that teaching kids that they are either a victim or indebted based on their race and what happened in history is wrong. Our kids should learn about history so they don't repeat it, but they shouldn't feel the burden of what our ancestors did. And this would be taking us backwards and teaching them to judge others based on the color of their skin. With regards to privacy and protections of students, after reviewing these bills, my major concern, like some of the others here, is for the privacy of the children. So how are the children that use the bathroom based on their biological, how they're born, how are they supposed to feel? Are they supposed to feel safe? Well, does this bill make them feel safe? And I believe it doesn't. I believe it violates their privacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Winkleman. Next up, we have Dustin McEwen. Miss Dana Stenson.
Hi, thank you so much.
Got it. Thank you. First of all, thank you for being board members here. It's hard work, and I really appreciate you doing it. And secondly, also, I do want to talk about critical race theory and my vehement opposition to having any part of it in my children's curriculum, and therefore here at Monument Academy. But I also want to say that I believe so far the staff at Monument Academy has been exemplary in how they've handled concerns from parents, communication with parents. This is a really difficult time to communicate, and I think the staff at Monument Academy is doing an exceptional job at doing that. And that said, critical race theory, I think, teaches children to view what we're trying to teach them, which is all of our subjects, history, etc., through a lens. It puts a lens in front of those subjects and in front of those facts. And that lens is primarily race, and to see the world in terms of groups of people, and those groups of people are defined not by merit or what they've done or contributed or even taken away, but by factors that they don't even control, like skin color or socioeconomic happenstance at the time, at the period of history. So I think to put that lens in front of our children's education and have them view everything through it would not only be a sad dumbing down of what we are trying to give them as parents and as educators, but also would be in violation of Monument Academy's philosophy listed on their website. So I just want to stand up. I know I'm not alone. We've homeschooled for a long time, and it's both my two children's first year here at Monument Academy, and it has been a crazy blessing to their lives to be a part of this community and part of this education. And I know we are not alone in that. And so I just want to encourage other people to, good turnout everyone, to keep talking and communicating, because one thing I've learned about this community is parents are really paying attention. A lot of them are paying attention a lot more than the communities in public school in California where we're from, sorry, and also here. People really care a lot, so that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Stenson. Next up, we have Jessica Schlupenbaum. Did I butcher that?
No, you did great, actually. All right, well, first of all, thank you guys. Again, I agree with everything that's been said. You guys do a great job. Sorry, this isn't all side. Thanks. So you guys do a great job. I really appreciate it. I really want to talk about the CRT that's on the agenda in particular. I believe as parents, we all have an obligation to teach our kids to be kind. I teach my children to make decisions on their friends and their associates based on the content and character of the people around them. And I believe it was great Martin Luther King as well, who said that that's how we should look at people, is by who they are on the inside. The CRT in and of itself is the definition of racism. We're focusing young minds on the color of one's skin to determine whether or not they're an oppressor or a victim, and whether they have victimhood status immediately or oppressor status. This is a known communist tactic to oppress people and to divide. That's how you destroy a country. Labels of victimhood and have psychologically held people back in society historically. The label of oppressor fuels hatred for a person simply based on the color of one's skin. To perpetuate the lie that this great nation is systemically racist is to spit on the graves of more than 600,000 men and women who gave their lives for the equality of freedom for all. Our country is great. Our children should be taught this. We are the only nation in the recorded existence of humanity to fight such a bloody war for the freedoms of slaves. There's not a race on this planet that at one time or another has not been enslaved. I think we can all agree that slavery and racism is wrong. And as parents, we all have the responsibility to teach our kids kindness and to be examples of unity. I think MA does a great job on focusing on educating core curriculum, and I believe that we should unite students with commonalities of Americanism and humanity and not trying to divide them or to bring even any attention to so many differences, but to focus on being loving and accepting. I think anything else would be unacceptable. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Schlupenbaum. Mr. Stan Crane. Mr. Damon Tiffany.
Run my timer. I just want to say first, thanks to the board. I really respect you guys, and I appreciate all the work that you put into the CRT issue.
As a concerned parent, let me start by saying how encouraged I am to see the board and MA take a stand against critical race theory. Our country is founded on ideas of freedom, equality, and justice for all. However, CRT is based on the Marxist ideology that sees a world in conflict and pits one group of people against another. Unfortunately for Marxists, every attempt to implement the ideas of Karl Marx has historically failed. But in the 1980s, academics recognized that they can use this Marx idea of oppressed and oppressor in other areas, like race, gender, even now, gender identities. Classical education is an education that deals not with the great men and women of history primarily, but with their ideas. And we don't judge people based on their color, whether they're white or black. We judge them based on the ideas that they've put forward. This is not the case with proponents of critical race theory. In a blog defending critical race theory, on the blog site Education Post, it states, the U.S. and all of its laws and institutions, were founded and created based on the myth of white supremacy. That's not true. I disagree with that idea, and I see no support for it at all. Certainly every nature, culture, and even so-called great men and women who have changed our world have done things and said things that we can't agree with. But the idea that all U.S. laws and institutions are founded on white supremacy is in itself racist and offensive to me. The great thing about classical education, which we claim to support, is that we can respond and say, show me. Is the idea that all men are created equal and endowed by the Creator with inalienable rights? If we look at it on its merits, it's racist. It's not. This and ideas like it were the seeds that brought about the elimination of slavery, the affirmation of the equality of women, and as freedom and justice won the day in our country flourished. CRT sees the world through a lens of race and other differences and is completely opposed to true education. A complete, true, and classical education should evaluate ideas based on their merits, not race or any other demographic. Critical race theory itself is a racist ideology that pits groups against each other with a false oppressed narrative instead of judging ideas on their merits, and has no place in classical education. I'd encourage all the parents if you have questions about CRT. There's a great book called How Activist Scholarship Made Everything About Race, Gender, and Identity by Dr. James Lindsay. And it goes through the history of how in the academic community CRT was developed. And it's scary. We should not teach it here. The second thing I'd like to say is I'd like just to request that the board make a specific policy in regard to providing guidance to parents and to teachers specifically to protect them when it comes to gender. This is true of the bathroom issue, which was brought up earlier, and I agree that people should use the bathroom of their specific birth, gender, or sex. But MA also has a dress code. Normally a dress code is put into place so students can focus on education rather than how they look. A dress code is at least a recognition that to some degree, school is not a place for unrestricted personal expression. However, I don't know if all the parents are aware, but there are young men dressing in skirts at school. You know, I don't have any problem with people expressing themselves. I don't have any problem with people being who they want to be. But at school, this isn't the place for that type of personal expression if we're going to have a dress code. If we're not going to have a dress code, different story. But if we're going to have a dress code, it shouldn't be a distraction.
Mr. Tiffany, I appreciate it. I've given you an additional minute, so thank you for your time, sir.
Finally, I just want the parents to be aware that, and it may not be true, but I've heard that a young man was cast in a women's role in the play. Classical education is founded on truth, beauty, and character, right? And if that's the kind of statements that the school, the teachers, the administration, or the board is making, and I'm not saying where that decision was made, you're sending a message to me as a parent as to what you think about truth and character. So that would influence my decision to come here. I didn't come here for sports. I didn't come here for all the AP classes. I didn't come here for choices in academics, because there aren't a lot. I came here because I care about truth and I care about character. And I would hope that, as much as I believe in the freedom of parents, that the school at least isn't going against the things that I'm teaching my kids. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dustin McEwen. Then with that said, that completes our public comments for agenda-related items. We will move into our consent agenda. Board, you've been distributed the minutes from January 13th, 21st, February 2nd. Are there any corrections on those minutes as distributed electronically? Okay. Any requests for those minutes to be read aloud? Seeing none, the minutes will be approved by unanimous consent. We need to establish our next meeting date of March 10th. Are there any objections to March 10th here at the East Campus? Seeing none, March 10th at 6 p.m. here at the East Campus will be our next meeting date for our regular scheduled meeting.
Are we determining the location later?
We'll determine location later. That takes us into reports of administration and committees. Mr. Holmes, you're up with our COO report.
Thank you. Several things that have happened during the last month. We hired Mrs. Tina Leone as our Director of Academics, and hopefully most of you as parents got that announcement. She is a former Monument Academy principal and has tremendous experience, and we'll be introducing her to the teaching staff at both campuses tomorrow. Well, we finalized the hiring of Mr. Walker as our West Campus principal. We also continue to move forward with Phase 2 expansion plans, a number of meetings with developers, finance, and all the pieces that go into that. We have posted our East Campus Middle School principal position and our East Campus High School principal position for next year. A couple of highlights from East Campus. The girls basketball team had a tremendous season. They were undefeated in the regular season for the A-team and lost a heartbreaking game yesterday in the playoffs, which was very sad. But they fought hard and had a tremendous season. We're very proud of them. As some of you probably saw driving up tonight, the modular space for next year has been delivered and set up in very short order. Also, auditions have taken place for the middle school musical, and preparations are underway for that. School tours are continuing, and I see some familiar faces that I met on tours recently. There's a lot of excitement and a lot of energy and enthusiasm about what's going on at Monument Academy. West Campus, they had a great school-wide assembly put on by a Harlem Wizard, and I hear a rumor that Mr. Walker actually got to do a little dance. And there is videotape, I believe, incriminating videotape. The tours, again, are going great. There's a lot of enthusiasm. Those tours happen Tuesdays at 10 at the West Campus, and they're Wednesdays at 10 here at this campus. Our student council at West Campus put on Spirit Week, and each day the dress was announced to a certain theme, and they didn't even let the snow days stop them. They just rescheduled them for the next week. Kindergarten Roundup was a huge success. There were a lot of families there, showed up with their children. Lolly's Ice Cream donated a cookie for each child and a coupon for their shop. And those are the highlights for last month.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Board, any questions for Mr. Holmes?
Mr. Holmes, is there an update on anything in terms of training for substitutes that was discussed at an earlier board meeting?
I don't have a large, there is some training that we do for those substitutes, so anybody that is interested in subbing and doesn't know if they can do it, there are some training videos and then some work with the principals in either campus that they're particularly interested in.
Great, thank you, Mr. Holmes. Mr. Brockhurst, you are up with our CFO report.
All right, we are 7 months into the fiscal year. So revenue then for January was at $836,000 the fiscal year to date. We're at $6.2 million, or 54% of the annual budgeted revenue. In terms of expenses for January, we had $951,000. Fiscal year to date, we're at $5.4 million, or 48% of the annual budgeted expense. The variance for the month, mainly due to purchase services. There's a lot of biannual payments that hit in January and some quarterly payments that hit in January, so that's going to be a bigger month than normal. In terms of net income loss, we had a net loss for January, again, due to the higher expenses. The net loss for January was $114,000. For the year so far, we have a net income of $733,000. For comparison to last year, we had a net income of $475,000. Any questions on that information? I have a few other things to kind of discuss, but any questions there so far? We'll be working or starting on the fiscal 2023 budget, kind of preliminary look at that, working with Mr. Holmes and principals to kind of start diving into that piece. Hope to we'll have something have a preliminary budget by March, our next board meeting, for you guys to look at, and we'll vote on that in April. I think is kind of the time frame we usually work with. In regards to the recirculation plan, we did engage Wilson & Co., a civil engineering group, to review the plans that we have. They're in the process of doing so, and will have some information to us soon, I think next week at some point, if I'm not mistaken, for board members to look at and kind of assess, and then a time to ask some questions of their findings there. There's a few other highlights in the CFO report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Board, any questions? Mr. Rothhurst? When we get the report back from Wilson & Co., when do we need to have that turned back to the county in order for HDR?
They would like it pretty soon. They're hoping to get something tomorrow. We let them know that the review that Wilson & Co. is undertaking is a little bit longer than a 1-week turnaround, just so that they have to do a thorough enough job of reviewing that, so that we're comfortable with what we're going to move forward with.
And what was the county's response to that?
I haven't seen a response yet from them on that. I know they're eager to keep it moving forward. There's I think like a 12-week waiting period for the, I want to say it's the state board or education board that has to review this and then approve that moving forward. So they're hoping to get that all completed soon. So that's why the urgency.
For those that may be confused by what we're talking about, the West Campus, we have a recirculation plan that's in process right now. And the HDR with the county has sent us plans, and we've hired our own civil engineer to review those plans to make sure that we are actually doing the right thing for the West Campus moving forward. So that's the process that we're going through right now. Once our civil engineer checks off on that and gives us a thumbs up, from there then that would go back to the county. So I just wanted to clarify that. It's probably a little bit confusing if you haven't been following in relation to what Mark's talking about. But thank you, sir.
I do have a question for Mr. Holmes, if I can go back a little bit. With regards to the modular, which I did notice, and I'm sure we all did, 2 questions. Is that the final location it's going to be? And has there been any further movement on which classes are going to be in that modular?
Where that set of 4 classrooms is set up is the final location. It's easy access to bathrooms. It's also has cement leading up to that location. It'll be easy to build a handicap accessible ramp up there, which will be required. So we're in the process of getting electrical hooked up. We'll also need to get fire code approval for a number number of other things moving forward. And I forget the second part of your question, sorry.
That's okay. I was just asking, what's the status of determining which classes are going to be out there?
Yeah, and that's a subject that we're going to have to work with the staff on and try to figure out. I think one of the things that we've heard from staff in preliminary discussion is that it might be a mix of grades out there, probably not just a single grade. Do that. We've also, and it's not just because I'm a science teacher, but I think science is really hard to teach out there if you don't have lab materials and water and some other things, so probably won't be science classes out there, or very limited at least. So it's something we've got to determine with the staff and work with the administration of the East Campus to figure out what the rotation is in those classes and who will be out there at what hours.
When do you expect to have a final decision to share with the community?
Well, I'd like to hire the principals for this campus first before we make final decisions on that, and I know that pushes it back probably farther than some people would like. But we'll begin having some of those, we've begun those discussions already, and we'll continue to get feedback from our teaching staff. But there probably will be a mix of grades at different times during the day, is what we're leaning to right now.
Mr. Holmes, with respect to the 4 classrooms that are out there, are we still in consideration to add 2 more?
Yes, we could still add, we have available to rent some 2 classroom modules from another company, and we're looking, and that's, getting one of those is in the budget you approved last month. And so we are looking at that to try to build our schedule based on enrollment and electives and some other factors to see how many classrooms we need. I feel like it's trending that we'll need those 2 additional classrooms. If we don't do that, we might end up a lot like we are this year with some teachers traveling a lot, and just that's not an optimal situation. So.
To add to that, since we do have traveling teachers this year, are you planning to put those into use right away for the remainder of the school year?
We would be able to use them as soon as we get them permitted, get fire code done, electrical and all those. It would be additional rent. As soon as we start using them, we would need to pay the rental fee, monthly fee that is in our agreement.
Thank you, Board. Any further questions? All right, let's move into our committee reports. Ms. St. Alvin, we'll start with you on Highway 105.
Well, Mark really stole my thunder on Highway 105. But I have a lot of other things to say tonight. So, really, I have the only thing to add to the discussion is that Kelly Frettel, who is the engineer that we spoke with last week, has a lot of experience with school traffic and projects, so I feel like she's a great fit for this review of this plan. She also assured us that HDR is an excellent firm, so I think we're in good hands. The other great thing about Wilson & Co. is that they potentially could be an owner's rep for the project. So that's something to be determined, but after our meeting last week, I felt like we're in good hands. So I don't have much else to add, but we should be getting the review back next Thursday, and we will move on from there.
Thank you, Mrs. St. Alvin. Mrs. Clinton, you're up with curriculum.
There's no report for curriculum at this time.
Thank you. Back to you, Mrs. St. Alvin, for SAC West.
Okay, the SAC West Committee met on Tuesday, February 1st, to approve the recommendation from SAC for the West Campus. And the recommendation made is based off the survey results from the mid-year survey of parents. So I'm going to read the letter from the chair of the committee, which is Jamie Hardy. Dear Monument Academy Board of Directors and Administration, the MA School Accountability Advisory Committee for the elementary campus, SAC West, completed a mid-year parent survey in December and reviewed its results at its January meeting. After discussion, the committee would like to make the following statements and recommendations to the board. It is important to note that this survey had 39% participation from the MA parents, 213 responses. with the majority of questions rating 90% or higher satisfaction. Among the long list of praised responses received were for MA's teachers, staff, and administration, challenging academics, traditional education, individualized academic help, excellent communication options, and opportunities for increased parent involvement. This year's top concerns among parents were the hope to see clubs and extracurricular activities started, which was also the top concern last year, the new car line procedure, and improved character development among students. First, the committee is pleased to see several clubs and sports camps being offered since the close of the survey. These include karate, random acts of kindness, yoga, mahjong, land sharks, basketball, art, and lacrosse. We appreciate the effort the board administration have put forth, as well as the support from teachers and staff to reactivate these opportunities that support developing the whole child at Monument Academy. Secondly, the committee would like to point out that although car line was a top concern among MA parents in this survey, the newest car line procedures had only been in effect for a little over 2 weeks when the survey was taken. The committee agrees that overall, the current car line procedure is the best solution and runs quite smoothly. Thank you for all of the many options the Highway 105 Project Committee has considered. Given there's only 4 months left of the school year before the Highway 105 improvement plan starts, if the MA recirculation plan, part of that construction is completed by the start of 22-23 school year, the committee advises the board and administration to keep Carline as is for now and reassess the procedure and or need for a campus-to-campus MA bus a bit after the next school year starts. Should a bus be considered, the committee also wants to advise the board and administration to complete a poll with the parents first. The poll should include how many parents would have their students use the bus and how much parents would be willing to pay for this service. And lastly, with regard to the concern for building student character, one of the traits MA emphasizes in its mission statement, the assistant principals and lead teacher will be looking into whether the 8 Keys of Excellence program that MA currently uses has additional curriculum offered that might include handouts for students to take home to supplement what the teachers use in the classroom. The committee would also like to advise the board and administration to review the student discipline policy to make sure it aligns with MA's character program. SAC West would like to let the MA community know that their voices are heard through these surveys and appreciates their input to help enrich the excellent educational experience at Monument Academy. I'm not quite done with my report. I would like to also give a comment. There was an article published in the OCN about the DAC, which is the District Accountability Committee, and there were several misstatements about the MA secondary update. So the information, and we just wanted to give correction. So the information in the DAC article states that MA was founded in 1986, but it was actually 1996. It states that MA's target population for the secondary school is 400 to 500. Our total middle school and high school target population, when the high school is filled, will be 900 to 1,000 students. The next paragraph opens with the line, the vision for MA is to provide a character-based education involving classic core classes, otherwise known as Common Core. Monument Academy is not providing Common Core instruction. Our standards are well above Common Core and are based in classical foundations. We use core knowledge sequence in grades pre-K through 8. Core knowledge sequence is a detailed outline of recommended content, knowledge, and skills to be taught in language arts, music, math, and science. And finally, the next paragraph states that we hope to add grades 9 through 12 in the next few years, and we currently serve students grades pre-K through 10, and for 22-23 we will add grade 11, and then in 23-24 we will add grade 12. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, Ms. Engelman. Mrs. McHugh, you are up with SAC East.
Okay, so I as well am going to read. Each campus has, for those of you who are not maybe aware, each campus has an accountability committee. And obviously Megan serves on the west and I serve on the east. And we just wrapped up reviewing our survey results from our families. And I want to thank Mrs. Emily Davis for her hard work reviewing and writing this letter of recommendation. This year we did it a little bit different. In years past, we've typically only had a letter of recommendation to the board, but the committee this year felt it would be more beneficial to also write a letter to the administration, which I believe you all received already. So I'm going to read this letter. Thank you for writing this. Monument Academy Board of Directors. Each year, the East Campus School Accountability and Advisory Committee conducts 2 parent surveys, one mid-year and one near the end of the school year, to receive feedback regarding parent and student experiences at Monument Academy. Survey results were recorded from December 1st through the 17th, with 75% of middle school families and 92% of high school families participating. You guys, that's huge. I just want to thank you all for that participation, because we really do use this information. This is valuable to our school. Many questions remained the same as previous years to allow longitudinal comparison. This summary letter will approximate the combined middle and high school responses when appropriate. We will also provide a more detailed letter to the admin, and survey results will be posted on the Monument Academy website for everybody to view. Overall, approximately 87% of parents are satisfied with their child's academic progress. We are encouraged that 85% of parents know how to access Canvas to view students' progress and grades. We will provide instructions for remaining parents in the links news. There was a decreased rating for all areas of communication. Additionally, middle school parents reported feeling like there were decreased opportunities for their voice to be heard. Comments indicated a desire to better see responses or action plans to concerns that have been raised, and for more opportunities for two-way communication, which is not possible at board meetings. Several common themes presented in the parent comments. The largest concern was regarding staff turnover, including fear of continuing to lose excellent staff in the future. We appreciate the board's discussion of this during the December board meeting, and note that the bulk of survey responses were submitted prior to that meeting. We saw a 10% decrease in parents stating that they would recommend MA to others, with the majority of comments citing a loss in confidence in the communication relating to resignation or concern that our mission as a school would change. The question with the greatest change from last year was regarding the child's perception of MA's atmosphere. Responses were consistent with both middle and high school. Parents reported positive feelings of belonging, safety, and attitude towards school for 65% of students compared to 91% previously. Comments suggest that a change in student behavior, bullying, and lack of consequences are large contributing factors, especially within the middle school. In a related question, we asked if students felt connected to the MA community, both student to teacher and student to student. Although there was a decrease reported in students' connection to teachers, down by 7% in the middle school and 17% in the high school, there was an increase in students' connection to one another, positive 17% for both. Comments suggest this is due in part to our least restrictive approach in handling COVID-19, in-person learning, mask choice, clubs, no lunch seating restrictions. There is a need to differentiate the high school from the middle school, both in physical space and in offering additional electives and sports programs. Although 80% of parents reported being satisfied with the opportunities to develop their whole child across 5 categories, those categories being character, leadership, social, and emotional supports, clubs and sports, and electives, satisfaction decreased considerably regarding these 2 areas. We are very thankful to our community for taking the time to participate in the SAC survey. It is clear from the content and the volume of comments that our parents are passionate supporters of their children's education. There is a strong desire to be informed and involved in the mission of Monument Academy and our exceptional staff that brings this mission to life. Comments included suggestions for improvement and an outpouring of gratitude for the standards, the staff, and the opportunities that set Monument Academy apart. I'm almost done. During the time that SAC was comparing survey results and processing comments, the board and administration have already communicated and/or implemented several programs that will address parent concerns. We interpret this as a sign that our leadership is in tune to the students' needs and the parent community. Our recommendations to the board based on this mid-year survey are that the board continues to seek open and transparent communication with parents, including opportunities for two-way communication, that the board share plans for hiring and retaining excellent teachers, and that the board focuses on how to create individual identities for the middle and high school in both physical space and with additional elective class offerings and sports for both. We are requesting that the board respond in writing to this letter so that our community is made aware of both the changes already made and the plans for the future growth. Sincerely, Emily Davis, East Campus Chairperson. And that concludes my report. Thank you again, Emily.
Thank you, Mrs. McEwen. Next up will be policy governance. That will be the committee that I serve on. I really have nothing to report. Due to the inclement weather day last month, we canceled that meeting. We will reconvene later this month, but the next policies in line for our review would be 1524 through 1530. So that'll be my report for policy governance, and that will move us into our finance committee report from Mr. Dole.
Well, good evening to everybody. Finance Committee, we met this last Tuesday. Two main points in our discussion. The first one being the continuation for the build-out phase 2 of our high school so that we can continue to open grades at 11 and 12. Very encouraging conversation with our contractor, learning about different opportunities that we have to finance the project going forward, getting creative in some of that financing. I'm encouraged. I can't share any of the details, but I am encouraged in the fact that I think in just the next maybe 4 to 6 weeks at most, we'll be able to start unveiling plans and start talking about groundbreaking and moving forward with this project. So that's a positive piece on the phase 2 update. And then the second piece that we dove into, and we're going to get into some discussion a little bit later that'll lead us into the fiscal budget for 22-23. But was that about teacher pay? As most everybody is aware, there was a release by D38 with regards to what they're doing in terms of teacher pay, but I also want to acknowledge that to an extent that's still unclear. There's some understanding that we need in terms of what defines a teacher. I think just in general, we think of teachers as a lot of people in the building when factually they are categorized as whether it be paras or counselors or whatnot. So we truly need to understand what it is the district's doing. And I don't say that in a means of how we're going to posture, because believe me, we truly recognize that we need to get teacher pay up. It's been a very loud, clear, and message, I think, at the heart of every board member. You all know that that's what we want to do. Of course, we do have a budget that we have to work in, and we're going to talk about what type of percentages we can look at and what those equate to in dollars, and we get into this fiscal budget discussion here a little bit later. I'm going to give our constituents some numbers to just kind of think about as we go forward and figure out how, as a family and attendee of this school, how can we help out? Because there is, to a large point, we are a charter school that requires very little financially from our families. We are constrained under being a charter school in terms of how we fund our buildings, where we spend our money, how much we can then afford to pay our teachers, and it's not where we want to be, but we do have to recognize those constraints. So we'll talk about that here in a little bit too. And then there was also some further discussion with regards to safety and security in the building. We're going to have some discussions here a little bit later, and I can answer some questions at that point in time. But that's the report for the Financial Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Dole. Mr. Buchkowski, you're up with Buildings and Facilities.
Thank you, Ryan. No report tonight.
All right, Mrs. Clinton, Volunteer Committee.
Thank you. I actually do have a good report tonight. We got the volunteer portal up and running in the last couple of weeks. Those of you, about every other chair, there's a flyer. So there's, if you haven't already signed up in the volunteer portal, please take that flyer home with you. We're asking for 1 sign up per household because everybody can log their hours together as one. But this way it centralizes where you can find all of the events. And as well as if there's something that you do that is not like a sign up that you do each day, it's just hours you put in, you can find that from the drop down menu and add those. But these hours that we're tracking will be used as part of applying for grants, part of our bond financing process, and then it also just is another way as parents we can be engaged and inside the school and helping out our staff and really understanding the amazing things that they do every day. So make sure you get signed up in the volunteer portal. That is going out every week in the Links newsletter. For the West Campus, a flyer has been sent home with the students. And then it's also on the website where you can log in and register with the new program. So for now, we're not meeting this month. I'm going to just focus on training a couple more people to help do the administrative side of things. And then we'll go from there. Thank you.
Okay, I have a question. So if you volunteer, say, in your child's class, do you go in then and log your own hours in?
Yes, so you are logging your own hours, and so you select that from the drop-down menu of what kind of volunteer work you did. And there are opportunities as well to be doing volunteer work from home. Not everybody can be in the building during school hours, but there are ways that you can still contribute. And if you have questions about that, please just reach out to the volunteer committee and we can help direct everybody to some way that they can help and it works within their own schedules.
But on the same link, there's also volunteer opportunities, correct? Okay.
Correct. And then on the website, there is a long list on our MA website. If you click on the volunteer link, we've spelled out a lot of the different opportunities and ideas for opportunities, descriptions that go along there for things that you can do from home or in person during school hours. And then also if you're contributing to the after-school enrichment activities as well.
Great, thank you, Mrs. Clinton. And our last committee report, Ms. St. Alban with RDC Resource Development.
Okay. So there's a committee that has been put together. It's approximately probably 20 women who are planning a big fundraising event. I had the pleasure of sitting in on their meeting last week or the week before, and they're incredible. We are absolutely blessed to have this group of people dedicating their time and talents to planning a fun night benefiting Monument Academy. So this will be an annual event, and the event will be called Invest in Tomorrow. But the theme for this year is called Lights, Camera, Auction, and it will be a red carpet gala that will be a chance for parents to come and mix and mingle. We'll have a silent and live auction, and all of the proceeds will go for teacher bonuses and school safety. Sponsorships and tables and individual tickets are now on sale, and I have this flyer that I can pass around. There's a little QR code on the bottom, and that's where you can scan to buy a table or tickets. The committee's still looking for auction items, and if you have anything great you can donate, you can contact Wendy Breathauer. And finally, the event will be held on April 7th from 6 to 8:30 at the Boot Barn Hall. So if you have any questions, please email us or ask me after the meeting, but I think it will be a great night.
Thank you, Mrs. St. Alban. That completes our committee reports. We will move into items requiring board discussion and action. First on the list tonight is graduation requirements. As the board is aware, last month we had tasked you, Mr. Holmes, to go back and garner input in relation to the graduation requirements that were presented. Is there anything you can speak to tonight?
Nothing much additional, but I do want to talk a little bit about how some of the simplification that we've done here relates to the SAC report. Part of the SAC report that we've heard, and we've heard this from families, is that they really wanted more electives. And I spent time with all of our current 8th graders and high school students talking about a list of electives, about 30, 35 electives, and asked them to give me feedback on what they want. But part of that is tweaking the graduation requirements, and with that is a 4-year plan. And one of the things that I believe has lowered our rate of 8th graders becoming freshmen is the number of electives. And I think that's important. And so part of the simplification of this allows that freshman class to have 2 or 3 electives, whereas this year and the year before they were fairly limited. Part of that limiting is just due to the size of the school. As the school grows, they'll be able to have more electives. But the simplification of these graduation requirements also allows for that, but also maintains the very high academic standards of Monument Academy that have been put forth before.
Board, is there any further questions in relation to the graduation requirements? Everyone has been distributed electronically what Mr. Holmes has presented to us. My understanding, Mr. Holmes, is you would need a formal motion tonight accepting these.
I believe so, since it's a board, I believe that's best to have our graduation requirements officially approved by the board.
Does anybody have a formal motion to present? No. All right. I'll hereby move that we adopt the graduation requirements for the 22-23 school year as presented by the COO.
Second.
We have a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All right. Seeing none, we'll call the vote. Mr. Bichkowski, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Clinton?
Aye.
Mr. Dole?
Aye.
Mrs. McEwen?
Aye.
Mrs. St. Aubin?
Aye.
For the record, Ryan Graham votes aye. The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Holmes, for getting this over to us and bringing back feedback. All right, that'll move along to our HR assessment update. I have Mrs. McEwen and Mr. Bichkowski to speak on this tonight.
Yes, thank you, Ryan. So we just received the results from the survey that the staff did just today, actually. And so we're still in the process of going through all that. I'll back up and tell you a little bit about how the survey was designed and executed. So we used the firm Employers Council, which is a very well-known and respected firm in HR in Colorado, to do a survey of all employees. So that is both the faculty and the staff. And they performed a survey of questions, and the questions were chosen using our own staff members here. So Kurt was a part of that, and so was Sherry and Tamiko and Laura. So those 4 individuals helped guide the board to choose the questions that would be asked to the faculty and staff. And that survey was then carried out over a 2-week period. And I saw today that we had 79% participation in that survey, which is an excellent number. And so really the next step for us is to kind of look at all the results from that and look at all the open-ended comments from the employees and put together a plan. But we here as the board, we did want to thank, first of all of our helpers, so Kurt, Sherry, Laura, and Tamiko for doing that. And then for all of you faculty and staff, thank you so much for participating in the survey, because that really gives us on the board some insight into what's going on in the school and gives us some data for us to work with. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. McEwen? All right. That will move us into our 22-23 fiscal school year budget. Mr. Dole.
All right. Mr. Brockmers, I'm going to ask you to be on standby here because I don't recall all the numbers. As our CFO, Mr. Brockmers, stated earlier, he is currently working on the finalizing, in conjunction with Mr. Holmes, the school budget for our upcoming 22-23 school year. And it was probably 2 board meetings ago where we discussed the fact that on our 5-year forecast and whatnot, that we've got some new financial challenges in the budget as certain bond payments come due and whatnot. And it was a fairly large six-figure deficit that was being forecast, and there was concerns about cutbacks and letting people go. And the board asked Mr. Brocklehurst to go back and eventually present us with a balanced budget, of which he, I'd say you're 95% of the way there. And looking forward to that presentation at our March board meeting. But in doing so, I think there are some details that I need to bring to light tonight, just so that our community can hear them. And as we talk about teacher pay, and as we talk about enhanced safety and all of the other things that we're trying to accomplish. I stated before that as a charter school, there are certain things that we have to pay for that the public district schools don't have to. The primary expense being our building and our facilities. I believe that runs approximately 20% of our overall budget. So if you step back and think about the fact that today we have $29 million in bond payment that we pay for every month, and we've got some larger payments come out as those bonds are called and whatnot. I think on an annual basis, that puts us at $1.6 million, somewhere there. Do you remember what we pay annually, Mark, for our buildings? Currently.
About 1.4 this year, and next year it jumps to
over 2. Right. So I just point this out so that as we all get to attend this wonderful school, there's just financial challenges that we face that the public schools don't. And someday we hope that there's a capital bond on the ballot that gets passed, and Monument Academy is included, and we get to use some monies to spend on our facility that don't carry any debt. Going into phase 2, right now we're talking about, at a bare minimum, a $12 to $15 million expansion on this school. So that takes your debt up north of 29 by $11 to $15 million. That doesn't include everything that we're trying to do. And when we start talking about a swimming pool or a performing arts theater and whatnot, that just adds to it, and the more that we get to pay for it. But that, through our budget planning and whatnot, that gets covered through our enrollment and through the PPR that we receive and some other funding. But in balancing the budget for this upcoming fiscal school year, one of the points that will be drawn out is the fact that there's a $150,000 call for fundraising. I'm pleased to hear Ms. St. Alban talk about the upcoming fundraising event in which we're going to hopefully raise some significant dollars to speak to bonuses for teachers as well as our security program. I want to shed some light just on security programs so you can start putting some dollars in your heads as to what is really needed. If we're already looking at $150,000 needed in fundraising to a balanced budget next year, and we're looking to increase our SRO program, and we'll get into it here later, but also some other security measures. Just that piece alone takes the $150,000 to almost $300,000. Haven't even talked about teacher pay yet. So we need $300,000 in my mind at this SRO safety event as well as the gala. As we get into the financing of the buildings, I would like to see us challenged to raise somewhere between 10 to 20% for the upcoming $12 to $15 million and north thereof if we move through the full expansion in phase 2. The SRO program, the gala, I think, will be the event that will, or we'll be trying to raise the significant dollars. But as we speak to the SRO program, it costs the school $50,000 a year for the SRO program. The other 50% is picked up by the county. And we're looking to add another SRO so that we have one in each campus. We need dollars for that. We get into a security program that's going to add another $50,000. If you do all the math of what I'm talking about, we need to raise $3 million at a bare minimum. In the Finance Committee meeting, the idea was tossed around as to how do we do this through fundraising? Can we get matching dollars? Who can we reach out to that loves the idea of Monument Academy? It doesn't mean that they have to be here at Monument Academy, but they love who we are, what we do, how we educate our kids, what we stand for. We're going to be needing to seek those, and I ask everybody here in attendance tonight, not just board members, to think about who those people are, who we can reach out to. Maybe they want to be part of the future of Monument Academy through a donation. Maybe it's just the ability to put their name on a building, whether it be on a field, whether it be on a scoreboard, whether it be on the new gymnasium that's going to be built, whether it be on the new academic wing, swimming pool, you name it. I know there's people that like to have recognition, and that's okay. We like their dollars just as much to help support the cause to get there. I don't overlook that fact, but the point for bringing this all up is really to bring light, to get to a balanced budget for next year. We're really going to call on our MA family to bring dollars to the table through various fundraising events, and I want to make sure the board's aware of that one piece will be a $150,000 line item raising of funds through various events. But that doesn't allow for everything that we're talking about and have been talking about in terms of just added measure, the teacher pays going up, which leads me to the other numbers that I need to make sure I present. Again, just so you, as board members, understand what a raise for a teacher costs here at Monument Academy. We currently have what is categorized in our accounting system, 76 teachers. Am I correct, Mark, in saying that includes ESS and special? Okay. There's still a lot of people that I left out. In fact, it's about 50% of the remaining staff here at Monument Academy. But I'm speaking to those that are truly booked as teachers in the accounting software and how we look at it from a budget perspective. Next year's budget also calls for a $1,500 increase for each teacher. That's the cost of $115,000. The actual number is $114,000. That equates to just over a 3% increase across the board for those that are qualified and categorized as a teacher. If you were to increase the overall teacher payroll by 10%, the cost of that is $366,500. I want to encourage the board and the community to be creative in figuring out how we get the teacher pay up. Speaking honestly and truthfully, because again, it has to be a balanced budget. We can't go into our reserves every single year. We're going to need help from the community. We're exploring internally if we're able to put up a 3% or a 5%, and don't hold me to any of these numbers, not yet. But if we're able to put up a 3% through the school budget, can we get matching through donations and encourage and say, we'll put up 3% in the budget if you as a family, the family of MA, can raise 3%. And now you have a 6% increase. That's just one of the ideas we've tossed around. But I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have in terms of what we're looking at in fundraising events as it relates to the 22-23 fiscal school budget.
Board, any questions for Mr. Dole? Thank you, for that report, Mr. Dole. Next up will be the threat assessment team update. So some of you are aware, last January, the board gave a directive to the COO to establish a threat assessment team inside this campus. We have had safety teams in place, but the threat assessment team, the crux of it is to basically take a hard look at our policies, our procedures, what we are doing, and see what we need to do to potentially further expand on those. What came out of that directive was the following day, actually after our last board meeting, Mr. Holmes and Mrs. Duca had both reached out to me to let me know that the team was being established and Mrs. Duca would be chairing that team or leading that team. So if I can put you on the spot tonight, Mrs. Duca, if you could give us an overhead view of where we are with that threat assessment team here at Monument Academy.
Well, good evening. The threat assessment team is comprised of staff members from both campuses, and we meet weekly to work on those board initiatives that you just spoke about. I had the opportunity to work with the Executive Director of Student Services in District 38 regarding the formal documents that are used for threat assessments. In formalizing our processes, Monument Academy will use the same documents that District 38 uses for threat assessments. We'll be using the screening tool as well as the actual threat assessment documents. These comprehensive documents are vetted by the Secret Service and cover all aspects of the process. Our team created specific guidelines to follow from the beginning to the end of the investigation to ensure all steps are taken. Our team will be receiving training from the Chief of Safety and Security in District 38 on February 22nd. The training will be focused on using these threat assessment forms as well as conducting investigations. I appreciate the assistance we have received from District 38, and I look forward to continuing to partner with them. Our team will continue to focus on our efforts of the board initiatives, and we will continue to review, refine, and create processes. Next week, we are going to really talk about the clarification of individual roles, as well as formalizing the process for communication.
Thank you for that, Mrs. Duca. Board, do you have any questions for Mrs. Duca? I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you another question that's going to jump ahead. Would you be available to speak further to the community next month? And it'll make more sense when we get into our next discussion action item. But understanding that February 22nd will be the first training, is that correct? Okay, terrific. All right, that will move us into letter E, our School Safety Information Night. So, as a quick overview, this is going to tie back into the threat assessment team update. Our intent is to obviously protect our students, first and foremost, number one. And part of this threat assessment team, one of the things that this board has looked at is to further bring additional safety into this school. Now, what we would like to do is next month have a community night to hear your engagement, your input, your discussion in relation to having armed staff inside our school. And I know this is a hot topic, but we certainly would like to hear what our school community would have to say about that. As it stands right now, on March 3rd at 6:30 p.m., I have asked Laura Carno, the Executive Director of FASTER, to come and speak to our community, in addition to John and Maria Castillo. Some of you may be very familiar with that name. Their son, Kendrick Castillo, was killed on May 7, 2019 in the STEM school shooting in Highlands Ranch. And it's a very powerful testament of what they have gone through as parents, and they are willing to come and speak to our inmate community. So tonight, what I would like to propose to this board is that we move forward with a work session or a special session for March 3rd, 6:30 p.m. And if there's no objections to that, we'll go ahead and get that on the calendar. And then I would also ask you, Mrs. Duca, to be prepared to speak as well that evening in relation to the threat assessment team.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Okay, terrific. I don't know if I need a formal motion on this, but I will ask the question, are there any objections to March 3rd, 6:30 p.m. here at East Campus to listen to Laura Carno and then, of course, John and Maria Castillo? No? Okay, seeing none, we will go ahead and move forward with a special session that evening, and right now that would be the number one topic on the agenda for that night.
And that will be here at the East Campus?
Yes, ma'am. All right, next up on the agenda is a review of board term limits in the bylaws. As each of you know, our term limits are not clearly defined in our bylaws, so what I would like to do tonight is more or less just make a proposal that we clearly define in our bylaws at MA what those term limits would look like. And I'm going to read something from you out of, this will actually come out of the Colorado Constitution. So what I'm proposing will be in accordance with Section 11 of Article 18 of the Colorado Constitution. So I'm going to read the text out of there to make sure we're all understanding of why I'm going to propose the motion after this. But it says, in order to broaden the opportunities for public service and to assure that elected officials of governments are responsive to the citizens of those governments, no non-judicial elected official of any county, city, town, school district, service authority, or any other political subdivision of the state of Colorado, no member of the State Board of Education, and no elected member of the governing board of a state institution of higher education shall serve more than 2 consecutive terms in office, except that with respect to terms of office which are 2 years or shorter in duration, no such elected officials shall serve more than 3 consecutive terms in office. This limitation on the number of terms shall apply to terms of office beginning on or after January 1st, 1995. For purposes of this Section 11, terms are considered consecutive unless they are at least 4 years apart. So that's straight out of the Colorado Constitution. So what I propose tonight, the first read of our language, and this will be from the language I'm going to propose would go into Article 3, Section 3.2, Paragraph D of our current bylaws. So the language that I will read first, and then I will read the entire paragraph, will state, in accordance with Colorado term limits for locally elected officials, term limits for MA directors are 2 consecutive terms. For purposes of counting 2 consecutive terms, directors appointed to vacancies and serving 18 months or less are not considered to have served a term, while directors appointed to vacancies and serving over 18 months are considered to have served a term. Any individuals meeting the 3.2 letter A qualifications are eligible for re-election to 2 3-year terms after a 4-year hiatus between terms. That said, the entire language, this would be considered the first read, the entire language of Article 3, Section 3.2, Paragraph D, election and tenure shall read, the initial board of directors shall be the individuals named in the charter application. Subsequently, at each annual meeting of the directors after the classification described in Section 3.2C, an election shall be held to elect a number of directors equal to the number of vacancies on the board, to hold office until the end of the 3rd succeeding annual meeting. Each director so elected shall hold office until such director's term expires, and thereafter until such director's successor shall have been elected and qualified, or until such director's earlier death, resignation, or removal. In accordance with Colorado term limits for locally elected officials, term limits for MA directors are 2 consecutive terms. For purposes of counting 2 consecutive terms, directors appointed to vacancies and serving 18 months or less are not considered to have served a term, while directors appointed to vacancies and serving over 18 months are considered to have served a term. Any individuals meeting the 3.2A qualifications are eligible for re-election to 2 3-year terms after a 4-year hiatus between terms. That would be our first read, or if you have any comments or direction on this, I would encourage you to get that to me, and then I will be presenting a formal motion at the March 10th meeting to adopt these and amend our bylaws. Is there any discussion on that? That will move us into our next letter on the agenda, letter G, resolution regarding the opposition to the use of critical race theory and other race-based training curricula and methodology in public education. At our December 9th board meeting, we made it very clear to the community that we were going to be correcting course at this school. And part of what we would like to do tonight is reestablish who we are as a school and clearly define that to our MA community. And our next 2 items on the agenda will aim to do exactly that. Parents, if there's one thing I want to tell you, in my opinion, you are the authority in your children's lives. Not this board, not this school, not this administration, not our teachers, not the state legislator, and not the federal government. And as a member of this board, I hold that truth very sacred, because that is my expectation as a parent with children here at Monument Academy. Many of you have made your voices loud and clear tonight, and I thank you for standing up at this microphone and doing so. This board does hear you loud and clear. And tonight I'm going to ask this board and you as parents to take a stand with me as we engage in this war that has saddled our kids with an agenda that is designed to destroy, to confuse, to create doubt, and ultimately divide and conquer. And if I may say, we must stand, we must fight, and we must not waver in this war that is at our doorstep. With that said, I hereby move that the Monument Academy Board of Directors approve and adopt the following resolution regarding the opposition to the use of critical race theory and other race-based training curricula and methodology in public education. Whereas Monument Academy, MA, in El Paso County, Colorado, is a nonprofit corporation and a local public body acting by its board of directors, and whereas the members of the board of directors of the school, the board, have been duly elected, chosen, and qualified, and whereas the board's mission is to provide a challenging, content-rich academic program offered within an engaging, caring, and positive learning environment. Established on a solid foundation of knowledge, MA emphasizes academic excellence, respect, responsibility, character, and exemplary citizenship. And whereas MA recognizes the importance of age-appropriate education on history, civil rights, and racism, and whereas MA educators will not endorse or advocate on behalf of a specific perspective in any areas of faith, civil rights, economics, international affairs, sociology, or politics, and whereas critical race theory, CRT, and the tenets of CRT will degrade and dismiss the societal values that we are not to be judged by the color of our skin, but the content of our character. And whereas MA schools and teachers are expected to provide a true and accurate representation and education on America's history that does not deny or alter our past. And whereas MA believes that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now therefore, be it resolved as follows. MA will not utilize or promote critical race theory or any other Marxist curricula for student education or staff training. And MA will ensure the following concepts will not be taught or promulgated within our schools. Number one, the notion of one's race or sex is inherently superior to another race or sex. Number two, the United States is fundamentally racist or sexist. Number three, an individual by virtue of his or her race or sex is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. Number four, an individual should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment solely or partly because of his or her race or sex. Number five, members of one race or sex cannot and should not attempt to treat others without respect to race or sex. Number six, an individual's moral character is necessarily determined by his or her race or sex. Number seven, an individual, by virtue of his or her race or sex, bears responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of the same race or sex. Number eight, any individual should feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress on account of his or her race or sex. Number nine, meritocracy or traits such as hard work ethic are racist or sexist or were created by a particular race to oppress another race. Number 10, ascribe character traits, values, moral, and ethical codes, privileges, status, or beliefs to a race or sex or to an individual because of his or her race or sex. Be it also resolved that nothing in these resolutions shall be construed to restrict any expressive activities protected under the Constitution, including academic freedom or student political speech. A second to the resolution for adoption. That will open us up to further board discussion.
Brian, if I could, I'd like to tell a quick story.
Absolutely.
I take this issue to heart very closely because I come from a family of immigrants. So we immigrated to the United States in the early 1900s. My great-grandfather Marson got off the boat in Ellis Island with no money at all and did not speak the language, and lived in New York and worked very hard, and later was able to convince the beautiful gal Catherine to be his bride, and then they raised children in New York and worked hard and prospered. And then my grandfather, he did the same. He worked at a Chevrolet plant making engines for Chevrolet while his wife worked at Wonder Bread. And they raised 4 kids. All 4 kids went to college, and all 4 kids paid for college all by themselves with hard work. My own father worked, after high school, he took some time off. He worked in a sausage factory and earned enough money to start in college. That combined with serving in ROTC paid for the rest. And then my father lived his dream and became an engineer. And his 2 sons, we also went to college and have worked hard. And that's how we've done it. And so, certainly I just want the community and the board to know my background in particular on this, and that, any other system that does not allow for this hard work to create success is really awful. And that certainly in my life, and probably in many of your lives as well, when you think of the things that you value most, are probably the things that you had to work hardest for. And so I think that I just want to let everyone know that this issue is very close to me.
I actually just prepared a statement. This resolution it brought 2 things to mind when I was reading it, and we've quoted Martin Luther King a couple times tonight, but I'm raising my sons to be men of character, men with integrity, men with humbleness and humility, men of respect. I'm teaching them to treat everyone with kindness, that we celebrate differences, but that we're not defined by them. Labels separate us, they don't unite us. The only label we should be encouraging is that we are all Americans, citizens of this amazing country. My children are not burdened by any sins of their ancestors. They understand that we learn from our past mistakes and celebrate past accomplishments, that we love this country and we see it as a blessing to have been born here. Monument Academy should be an extension of these parenting principles. That we're not judged by the color of our skin, but the content of our character, and I expect nothing less from the educators here than to grade my children by merit. I pray that this is also the kind of workforce that they will find, as we are seeing that is not the case right now. That they will be that they will find a workplace that has merit-based promotion and opportunity. The other thing that comes to mind is the part of the MA philosophy. And when I was researching schools when we moved to this area after separating from the Air Force, one of the reasons that I chose the school was the philosophy. And one of the public commenters tonight mentioned that. It states that Monument Academy is an American school. And if just you'll take a few moments to let me read that, I think it's important. So many of us probably haven't read the philosophy recently, but it's really good. And it's something that our school should continue to strive towards and continue to hold up. The founding fathers of this nation held that schools should prepare young people for civic life and their civic responsibilities. Likewise, the ancients designed education for participation in the civic life of the polis of the republic. Indeed, the word republic itself comes from 2 Latin words, res publica, meaning the public thing. When at the close of the Constitutional Convention, Benjamin Franklin was asked what kind of government the men now known as the framers had given the country, he famously replied, "A republic if you can keep it." The founding fathers knew that a republican frame of the government requires an informed citizenry educated in the public things. To this end, public schools used to teach civics, a series of courses throughout the primary and secondary grades whose purpose was to teach young people the history and theory of their constitutional order, an achievement that, however much influenced by ancient experience and thought, was unique at the time of the founding and remains a model of self-government today. We regret two related trends in modern education. The shocking ignorance among our young people today regarding the American tradition of self-government on the one hand, and the hostility towards civics education as being somehow a form of indoctrination reminiscent of Nazism, and thereby undermining a greater world harmony on the other. The two trends have to be related because only someone wholly ignorant of the sacrifices made by the men who stormed the beaches of Normandy, who raised the flag at Iwo Jima, who later formed and executed the Marshall Plan, and who for almost half a century in a war that was not entirely cold, checked the oppressive grip of communist totalitarianism, could say something so utterly foolish as that a proper American civics education is either fascistic or narrowly Anglo-centric. MA unapologetically embraces a thorough immersion in American government, history, literature, and arts, as well as the related discipline of economics, which vindicates the Founding Fathers' understanding of human nature, of civil society, and of the capacity of the individual following his own conscience under the rule of law. So important is the civic-minded mission of MA that another way of thinking about our enterprise is as an education worthy of the Founding Fathers, both the education they had in their youth and the education they recommended for generations yet unborn. In other words, we are in the business of keeping our republic, not forgetting it or bashing it. Such is the proper and necessary role of public education in a nation with a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Such a purpose does not deny the integrity and importance of other nations. As stated succinctly by E.D. Hirsch, an educational pioneer who describes himself as a man of the old left, we don't live in France or China. It is a duty of American schools to educate competent American citizens. Nor does it claim that this nation has always done right in every moment of its history. Rather, any true study of civics begins with the clear aims of the American regime stated time and again by the founders, but most memorably as: we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers with the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. The Founding Fathers created a clear path, clear standard by which the American experiment is to be judged. When Americans have lived up to this high aim, they have flourished. When they have departed from it, they have done so to their own detriment. Through the clear lens of the Declaration, we both study American history and learn to govern it. That's part of our philosophy on our website, and I hope that tonight we are making it clear that we intend to continue that tradition.
Thank you, Mrs. Clinton. Board, any further discussion?
I'd like to read a statement, if I can,
Of course.
of support for this resolution. These are the real issues that we should be talking about in a meaningful way in our community, and I'm proud to be a part of a community who has the courage to do so. Each one of you, thank you. These political theories affect all of us, but they especially affect our children on a daily basis. We cannot keep tiptoeing around these difficult subjects. Our children are the ones who are having to face the realities of our any inaction on a daily basis. These are hard things to talk about. They're uncomfortable, and they're painful even for some, but we cannot choose our own comfort over our children's well-being. It is imperative that our kids be in a learning environment that is free from radical political ideologies, especially in these young formative years. Our teachers should be free to focus solely on the subjects that they are teaching without these political theories mixed into the curriculum and without any personal bias. As a school, it is critical that we guard and protect our children from what comes in and affects this safe haven for true learning. Schools are to be a place of educating the mind on how to think more than on what to think, especially with regards to controversial political, social, ethical, and philosophical matters. As many of you probably know, and we've all heard it here tonight, Critical race theory, or CRT, is a branch of critical theory which comes from the Marxist ideology and which came from the Frankfurt School in the 1970s. That is not what America is about, and that is not what our school is about. CRT or CT or CLT, it has a variety of names, is a radical political ideology which has no place in our school. The curriculum of our school should be free of political bias, and that is why I support this resolution.
Board, any further discussion? Then I will call for the vote. Mr. Buczkowski, how do you vote on adopting the resolution, sir?
Aye.
Mrs. Clinton?
Aye.
Mr. Dole?
Aye.
Mrs. McEwen?
Aye.
Mrs. St. Aubin?
Aye.
And for the record, Ryan Graham votes aye. The motion carries. The resolution is formally adopted. The next item on the agenda tonight is a proclamation regarding the privacy and protection of students as it relates to Colorado Senate Bill 08200 and Colorado House Bill 211108. The proclamation that I'm about to motion for and read aloud, it's not a violation of the law. This is simply a position that this board is stating. We are declaring to this community who we are and where we stand. If the board adopts this tonight, then this proclamation will do exactly that, proclaim our position. The proclamation was drafted with two lenses, one of love and one of truth. But sometimes we need to be reminded that love is not what sets us free, not love alone, but truth is what sets us free. Tonight, I hope to bring forth a proclamation to this community that will bring that balance and understanding that this is not an attack. This is something that we are doing out of love to protect our students. With that said, I hereby move that the Monument Academy Board of Directors adopt the following proclamation regarding the privacy and protection of students as it relates to Colorado Senate Bill 08200 and Colorado House Bill 211108. Whereas Monument Academy, MA, in El Paso County, Colorado, is a nonprofit corporation and a local public body acting by its board of directors. And whereas the members of the board of directors of the school, the board, have been duly elected, chosen, and qualified. And whereas the board's mission is to provide a challenging, content-rich academic program offered within an engaging, caring, and positive learning environment, established on a solid foundation of knowledge, MA emphasizes academic excellence, respect, responsibility, character, and exemplary citizenship. And whereas the board firmly believes that parents, not schools, have the predominant and fundamental responsibility for ensuring the education, health, safety, and well-being of their children. And whereas the board supports natural law, moral truth, and protecting the innocence, vulnerability, well-being, privacy, and safety of every one of our students. And whereas the board believes that the current Colorado legislation referred to as Senate Bill 08200 and House Bill 211108 jeopardizes the innocence, well-being, privacy, and safety of our students. And whereas the board believes that there is a clear distinction between sex, which is the physical design at birth differentiating between male and female, and gender, which under current legislation has been redefined as a psychological determination subject to individual discretion. And whereas Monument Academy welcomes students from all walks of life, never discriminating against the enrollment and education of students in MA based on gender expression or gender identity. And whereas the board believes that the use of a sex-specific common bathroom and the use of a sex-specific common locker room by the individual who is of the biological sex is protected by the right to privacy from an individual who expresses or identifies as a non-biological gender under Amendment 4 of the Constitution of the United States of America. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed that number one, the Monument Academy Board of Directors declares that Monument Academy shall support the liberty and dignity of each student and staff member, and in so doing, shall not discriminate against individuals with regard to their personal liberty and dignity in the event that their gender is not consistent with their sex. And number two, the board firmly believes that any laws passed by the United States Congress and the Colorado General Assembly that mandate specific instruction or that direct MA to follow specific instruction regarding non-biological gender expression and/or gender identity in determining the use of biological sex-specific common bathrooms, biological sex-specific common locker rooms, and participation in biological sex-specific athletic sports violate natural law, moral truth, and expose our students to undue harm, confusion, and dysphoria. And number three, the board has a duty to ensure that MA protects the safety and bodily privacy of each and every one of our students, and that our students know they are encouraged and have a right to set boundaries protecting their privacy and report to their teachers, staff, administrators when those boundaries are violated. And number four, the board believes that our elected representatives at the state and national level have a moral and ethical obligation to challenge and repeal such laws that violate the innocence, vulnerability, well-being, privacy, and safety of our children. And number five, the board appeals to our parents and our constituents to make your voices heard as active and engaged citizens by contacting your elected representatives at the state and national level, asking them to take a stand for the privacy and protection of our students.
I second the motion.
We have a second. That opens us up to discussion. Board, any further discussion on the proclamation that was just read aloud?
No, but I would also like to make a statement on this for support, if I may. I believe that we parents are our children's primary teachers, and we shoulder the incredible responsibility of guarding and protecting our children in all things. It is our job to give our kids sound guidance as they are growing and facing things that are confusing in themselves or in the world around them. As their guardians, it is our job to be aware of what our children are exposed to, what they are being taught, and how they are being influenced. Many of us, my husband and I included, chose Monument Academy because we believe it to be a place that shares our values. We chose MA because of its commitment to partner with parents in their education rather than to be an institution that subverts our role as the primary influencers of our children. We chose MA because it is a school that seeks to guard and protect our children as well. In an attempt to accommodate a few, we have put many of our other students and children in very difficult and uncomfortable situations. In many cases, and this ought not be, our children are not feeling guarded, they are not feeling protected, and they are not feeling heard. We must pursue better solutions to these challenging circumstances without making anyone feel excluded or disregarded. We have been talking as a community these last couple of months about the reality of our school getting off of track from its original intent. And that intent is to be a classical school that teaches children to look back to the sources of the good and the beautiful and the true. I see what we are doing here tonight as another step in that course correction. I would encourage our families to go to our website and read our school philosophy. It's this exactly, and it's powerful. Everything that we do as a school should be built around and upon this philosophy of truth. Political theories such as CRT and gender identity and expression do not uphold liberty nor the dignity of our students, and that is why I am voting to support these statements here tonight.
Of course, absolutely.
Well, I want to begin just by saying that I truly love and respect and have compassion for all people. And the key word in that statement is all people. Under current legislation and societal trends, we are taking away rights from women and girls to, I don't know, I'm getting emotional, sorry, from women and girls to accommodate another protected class. The women who came before us, our mothers, our grandmothers, and our great-grandmothers fought for us to have equal rights. They dedicated their lives to fighting for the right to vote, to be educated, to participate in sports, for equal pay, and to have control over their bodies, their minds, and their finances. And I believe that many modern women have forgotten the sacrifices and the struggle that it took to get where we are today, and are subsequently standing by while those rights are taken away from our daughters. Personally, Personally, I have a daughter, and I know how precious and capable she is. She deserves to feel safe and comfortable when using a public restroom. She deserves to compete on an even playing field, and she deserves to have a mom that stands up for her future. Therefore, I support this proclamation because we as women need to give reverence to its history and protect what so many before us dedicated their lives for us to have equality in the eyes of the law.
Mrs. St. Aubin. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, I have a short statement I'd like to read just in support of this proclamation. I think this is a really important topic for us to discuss as we're working to define and develop the direction of our school as we presented in December. More often than not, this topic, I personally feel, revolves around a small number of students that are defining their gender or experiencing confusion. And the expectation is that the entirety of the community around them must accommodate in terms of facilities and sports. I would, however, ask that we discuss this in reverse and focus on the majority of the community we serve here and how we can best address the valid concerns, especially our female students have, about their privacy and safety in intimate spaces, as well as how this cultural shift fails to protect their rights to equality as athletes. And acknowledging that there's a difference between gender and sex, we can proceed with the understanding that you use a facility and play on a sports team that corresponds to your birth sex. Should a child want to pursue expression as the other gender, that is definitely their choice. But in doing so, they don't determine this at the expense of the rest of the community using facilities that should afford them a sense of privacy or denigrate the ability of female competitors to excel in sports. We can welcome all students and families to Monument Academy by also honoring the vision and environment that we strive to achieve on behalf of all students.
Thank you, Mrs. Clinton. Any further discussion from the board? Then I will call for the vote. Mr. Buczkowski, how do you vote, sir, on the proclamation that was read aloud?
Aye.
Mrs. Clinton?
Aye.
Mr. Dole?
Aye.
Mrs. McEwen?
Aye.
Mrs. St. Aubin?
Aye.
And for the record, Ryan Graham votes aye. The proclamation carries. Thank you, board. that will move us into our last item on the items requiring board discussion and action. That will jump us into snow days.
Sorry, this topic isn't quite as weighty. But the assistant principals of both campuses are recommending that we change a little bit of how we've directed our process and communication to parents about what we'll do if we run out of snow days. Originally, when the West Campus car line plan was tweaked to stagger the pickups, we knew that we had less time than maybe what we would need, and so there were some half days that we scheduled that would be used if we ran out of snow days and we needed those. Because the East Campus Secondary, we used one day for additional training of capturing kids' hearts. We also had a day and a half that we used because we didn't have sufficient staff to cover some classes due to a high absence of teachers and inavailability of substitutes. Both campuses are now basically in the same situation, and what the assistant principals are recommending is that if we use up our additional snow days that we have left, that anything past that will become a digital learning day instead of adding the half days as it's currently approved for West Campus.
Is there any questions from Mr. Holmes on that?
Could you give clarification to a digital day versus what we all are thinking about for e-learning?
Well, I know what it looked like at the West Campus. I don't know if I can talk. It'll look a little different because at the West Campus we've already met with our staff to become prepared, because inevitably it's going to happen. We're going to, even if we do the half days, we have 4 that you approved, 4 half days. That's only going to equal to 1 full day when you count the hours. So that we're expecting snow next week. We only have 1 or 2 more days left, period. And so if we get 1 more day added, we will eventually have to come up with Plan B, which would be online learning. For West Campus, our teachers will pre-record lessons, have review assignments, so that it won't be a burden on the parents, where they can just log in when they can, review what the teacher puts out there, follow those assignments, turn those in when we come back to school. For secondary,
the secondary plan is somewhat similar, is that the teachers would log on for a set time, and I think we've talked about 9:30 or 10, and then they would record lessons, students would be able to access those lessons. There would be assignments that they would do related to those lessons. Some of the specific details are being worked out, but that's how the days would work to be distance learning or digital learning days.
With the recording, my understanding is the recordings could happen that same day and then be available a little bit later for students at home to complete their assignments. Do you anticipate, could it potentially be that the recordings get out late enough that the students would be afforded maybe an extra day to turn in those assignments versus being due that same day or the next day?
Yeah, the students would have several days to complete those assignments. It wouldn't necessarily be due that day.
And what platform would you be using? I don't think teachers have been using any virtual platform this year, correct? So Google Classroom or?
Laura apologizes for not being here tonight. This afternoon, she had all those answers. But
She owes you.
Say what?
She owes you one.
She owes me one. That's right, coffee in the morning. I believe we talked at West Campus Google Classroom.
Yeah, I think this campus is all set up on Canvas, and that's a platform that they're used to using, both students and teachers.
Would this be a lot of extra work on teachers to get that set up? Would it be a lot of extra work for teachers to get this set up, or is it pretty simple?
The way we're presenting it with the recordings, it'll be simple. And we've already started having those discussions.
And what we've been talking about on this campus is that we're almost certain, like Mr. Walker said, we're pretty confident we'll run out of snow days and it's going to have to be done even if we don't, even using those half days, we're going to do that. And we feel like that is, from a parent perspective, less impactful on their family schedule. They're used to 4.5 days getting out on a half-day Friday, so this would preserve that process.
Just for clarification, Mr. Holmes, what you're trying to do is if we have a snow day, that day would just automatically turn into a virtual learning day.
And that's correct. And that would be after we've used up this additional snow days we have.
So we would forego half-day Fridays, or excuse me, we'd forego moving into full-day Fridays to make up those snow days at West Campus. Unfortunately, I don't know the details of how many days we've already used or, what the allocation is for moving forward, how many we have left.
I think both campuses have approximately 2 days left that we can use for snow days.
So 2 more snow days.
And part of why there's a little bit of difference in how you count it versus days scheduled versus hours used. So there's a little bit of confirming what we're doing with that. But I believe both campuses have 2 days left that we can use for snow days. And then obviously late start days count in that as well. And so that's why it's a little bit ambiguous.
So you would need a motion for the board to approve that tonight. Go ahead.
Yes, APs are requesting a motion this evening as we move forward with some possible snow days coming up before the next board meeting.
Before we move forward with any type of motion, I'm pretty sure of the answer, but I want to just ask, has anybody created a statement in support of this as we move forward? No? I'll come up with something quick for you.
To this, I know MA has always followed D38 in their snow day calling. This year, I feel like it's been a little bit excessive, especially when we're looking at snow days. Well, that's what I'm asking. Do we have a choice? Can we change, is that a policy, and can we change it?
My understanding is that's been a long-standing tradition of Monument Academy, that we follow the district if they make a delay or cancel school, and then we've reserved the right to cancel additional days because of the slopes on some of our campuses and things like that. As a charter school, we have the right to make those decisions completely on our own. With as many families as we have that have students both at Monument Academy and then have juniors and seniors at the high school and other things, it does make it awkward for families if we don't coordinate with District 38. So we've been following long-standing tradition, but as a charter school, we're not required to.
Mr. Holmes, has been discussion in past snow day discussions that we can have significantly different weather at our 2 campuses. How do you see that playing out in this? Could there be days where it's not a snow day at West, but it is a snow day at East, or will we be making calls for both campuses?
Mr. DiVincenzo assures me that could happen. There's enough distance and enough difference in weather that could be a possibility.
Just to clarify again, so if we have 2 days remaining and we have a 3rd snow day, that will be made up through the 4 approved days that we have now. If we had a 4th day, we'd start adding on at the end of the year.
As it stands, we would use those half-day Fridays that have already been scheduled if we run out of snow days.
But that's only for West Campus. You only approved it for West.
For West. And each snow day is made up through how many half-days?
How many what?
I thought I heard a comment earlier that it takes 4 half-days to actually make up one day. Right, so if we have a third snow day, the 4 that we've approved are done.
I also feel like those might have already, when's the first half day? Or the first full day Friday?
2 weeks from tomorrow.
Okay.
My initial thought on this is, I'm not a fan of extending the school year. I think everybody likes to get to summer as quick as they can. And knowing that our snowiest month, typically on record, is March, and we're talking about being done with our snow days before we even get through all of February. I would be in favor of going to digital days if it preserves the school year as it stands now.
I'm going to then go ahead and present a motion, maybe a little choppy, so feel free to amend, but I hereby move that we forego full-day Fridays in lieu of moving forward with virtual learning on deemed snow day closures once current snow day allocation is exhausted. Would that suffice for admin? Board, would there be any clarification on that motion? Then I would call for a second.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion on the said motion? Okay. Mr. Buczkowski, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Mrs. Clinton?
Aye.
Mr. Dole?
Aye.
Mrs. McEwen?
Aye.
Mrs. St. Aubin?
Nay.
And for the record, Brian Grant votes aye, and the motion carries. That will complete our discussion action items. That will move us into board comments and announcements. I'm going to start off the board comments section. Number one, thank you again to our community for coming out tonight. Just truly an honor to see how many of you have turned out. I want to take a moment to recognize somebody in this room. He's a man in the arena. He is up at the Capitol fighting daily to protect parental rights, school choice. He sits on the House Education Committee. He's the Assistant Minority Leader of the House of Representatives here in Colorado. And he's our local elected state representative, and he's here tonight. I'd like to introduce Tim Geithner to the community. I bring this forth to the community because once we adjourn into executive session tonight, I would strongly encourage parents in this room to make your voices heard with this man. He's here tonight to listen to you, and he would like your feedback on what happened tonight, what transpired. So please take advantage of the time that you can have with Representative Geithner, and we thank you for being here tonight, sir.
I do have a comment on the board election. Doesn't this seem fun? Well, we're still taking applications. We have 3 open seats for the board beginning in July of 2022. It's a 3-year term. If you are interested, you can email the board or you can follow the link that's been going out every week in the Links News. In April, we will have the candidates. We'll have them at our regular board meeting so you can meet them, and they will give a statement on why they desire to be in this position. But I would really encourage parents who are here tonight, who are involved, who are engaged, or maybe just have never really thought about it, to give it some thought and consideration, because it is an extremely rewarding and fulfilling position to serve in at Monument Academy.
I'm going to add to that and echo some of your stuff. You know, Megan and I are finishing up our 3rd year in the term, and for those of you that have been here for 3 years, you know that we've had quite an incredible road of battles over these last now almost 36 months. But knowing knowing the vision that has been cast forth for Phase 2 and where Monument Academy is headed. I'm proud to be on this board. I'm proud for what this board accomplished tonight. I do think that the next elected board members, there's a lot of fun things to be had over these next 2 to 3 years as we build out Phase 2, as we get the field put in, as we hopefully bring to fruition the Performing Arts Center, the swing complex. There's some other brainstorming going on behind the scenes, and I think it's just going to become fun and give you the energy and drive. I know it's been hard to watch us and try to figure out why would you run as a board member. Look at everything that they're dealing with. But there is a lot of good and a lot of excitement that I truly believe is starting to really start to shine. And so again, if you feel so led to, please go through that process. At least run for the board, understand a little bit more what it's all about, what the application process is. And although yes, it's still going to be hard work, there's a lot of good that comes out of it, and I'm very thankful that I've had this opportunity.
I also just have a quick announcement on behalf of the East and West PTOs. They're both gearing up for Teacher Appreciation Week, so since we have an audience here tonight, just reminders to look for those sign-ups they have so that we can spoil our staff. I think it's not this week, but the next week. So look for the ways that you can contribute, and you can also log those as volunteer hours if you are helping set up or in any way helping implement it. So thank you.
Mr. Walker, how are we looking for dog sign-up?
I am so glad you brought that up. I have only 6 signups for the rest of the year, so I need a lot of watchdogs to sign up.
All right, dads. I'm holding you accountable, and you're sitting next to your wife. She's holding you accountable. Get in there. Sign up for 2 days because you didn't sign up last semester. And truth be told, I have to sign up for mine this semester, so I'll get with it.
And 4 of those 6 are the same man.
Board, any further comments or announcements? This will be moving into a call for new business for next month. Nothing? All right. Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session.
I'll motion to adjourn to executive session pursuant to CRS 24640224F to discuss personnel matters in relation to the Employers Council survey as it relates to evaluating the COO.
I'll second that motion. Any further discussion on said motion? Mr. Bichkowski, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Clinton?
Aye.
Mr. Dole?
Aye.
Mrs. McEwen?
Aye.
Mrs. St. Alban?
Aye.
And for the record, Ryan Grant votes aye. That will adjourn us into executive session. Again, community, please take advantage of your time here tonight with Representative Geithner. He's glad to speak with any of you that would like to have a conversation. We are going to leave this room and adjourn to our executive session, of course, but in a different conference room, so you're welcome to stay in this room as long as you would like. When we come out of executive session, we will come back to this room and we will move back into open session. And from there, if we have any action items, then we would need to take a vote. I don't know if we're going to have anything coming out of executive tonight. But after that, once we adjourn the meeting, then we would have any public comment that is not related to the agenda tonight. And I will look at Mrs. Clinton to see if we had anyone sign up outside of Mr. McEwen. Okay. All right. All right. Terrific. So we are adjourning into an executive session. We're going to take about a 10-minute recess. And as we gather our stuff, again, please feel welcome to stay in this room. All right, we are back from executive session. It is 9:34. We are moving back into open session. We have no further discussion or action for this evening. I will entertain a motion to adjourn from open session.
I'll motion to adjourn from open session.
I second that motion. Is there any opposition? Seeing none, we are adjourned. That will lead us to our next item before dismissal. Do we have any public comment, non-agenda related? We do not. We do not. Then we are dismissed, board. Thank you.